Hey folks, my name is SWEGTA, and today I'll be serving as the narrator for this video, so let's get right to it. Before San Andreas was originally shipped, there existed more missions in the storyline as well as some more in-game features, but for various reasons a lot of them were cut during development. Without a doubt, a lot of you know about the things to do in San Andreas mod, or as it's also known, TTDISA. Its fame stems from the fact that it restores beta content and adds new features to your favorite game. And here is the first myth. It is believed that this mod restores 5 cut missions: Impounded, Doberman, Tanked Up, Roadside Assistance, and The Truth Is Out There. And my question to you is, do you really think that this mod restores these missions? If you were to say yes, I would fully understand. However, the answer is actually no, it does not restore them. Of course, you might say, wait a second, SWEGTA, I heard that these missions are really in the game files, but that they are just disabled. Disabled? That's something new to hear, honestly. The problem is that these missions were actually cut once and for all. Let me give you a quick rundown on what I mean by this. As we know, Rockstar is kinda lazy when it comes to clearing up unused content from their games, and thanks to this, we can easily discover these removed beta features simply by looking into the game's files. So now I want you guys to take a look at one of these 5 missions, specifically Roadside Assistance. According to the American.gxt file, this mission has a code name of Steel 3, which means that Roadside Assistance took place in between the missions Test Drive and Custom Fast Track. Test Drive is Steel 2 and Custom Fast Track is Steel 4 respectively. And well, that's pretty much all that is known about this mysterious Roadside Assistance mission. Is it possible to restore an entire mission based solely on its name and the name alone? No, it is not possible at all. Of course, it's not the end of the world if this mission's code is missing. We can always try to recreate the sequence simply by using other missions left over, such as in-game text, voice lines, mission objectives, cutscenes, and so on. But hold on, the Roadside Assistance mission is actually missing everything from the mentioned list above apart from the name. And as a result, the idea that the mission is being re-enabled in TTDISA, to put it frankly, is utter bullshit, which has nothing to do with the actual beta stage of the game. No one, apart from Rockstar Games themselves, actually know what you had to do in this mission, and I highly doubt that you actually had to tow a Sultan from the railroad crossing. Furthermore, the dialogue used in this mod was created by using different parts of other in-game dialogue, with the whole mission itself being done from scratch. What I'm trying to say here is that if you're a beta hunter and researcher like me, then you should completely ignore this mod while discussing these cut missions. Having that said, let's focus on the rest of the missions. Speaking of the Doberman Mission, in the final version of the game, the Doberman Mission starts when Carl receives a phone call from Sweet who tells him to go to Ammunition and Market to get some firearms and kill Little Weasel for slinging to Grove Street Brothers. Surprisingly, in the game files, this mission is listed as a mission for Crash. What is more interesting is the fact that there is a voiced and unused cutscene for this particular mission, so check it out.
CJ, get over here! Now you listen to me, you sanctimonious piece of shit. Pancho is my man and DEA don't touch my asset. That's just the fucking law. Oh, I don't give a holy fuck about some targets. Go frame some other rock slinger. Crack my ass, you lying piece of shit. Listen to me. You leave him on the streets. Got me? Carver, you piece of rat shit.
Damn.
Bitch.
Having a bad day, Officer Tenpenny?
Hey, don't even think that approaches Huma Johnson. And Hernandez, don't ever laugh at me again. Get over there and get my fucking phone. Move it!
Carver pulls in Pancho and he's gonna fold.
Well, it's a good thing we got our Doberman here to deal with it. You listening, Carl?
Nah, I didn't hear nothing.
Hey, don't yank my dick, Carl. You get over there and freeze that bus in East Los Santos. And Pancho doesn't make it into custody. You get me?
Yeah, whatever, man.
Get your ass out of here.
There should be some weed being bagged as evidence. Think of it as a little opportunity we threw your way.
Without any doubt, this isn't a coincidence, because when you take over Glen Park in the final version of the game, you will see Little Weasel running away and yelling that Tenpenny and Crash sold him out. And these lines are listed as Crash 2.
Tenpenny set me up! Buster Crash set me up!
I'm pretty sure that these lines originally belonged to Poncho but were later reused for Little Weasel. And now for the most interesting part. In the same sound bank alongside with Little Weasel's quotes, there are tons of unused voice lines from 2 police officers. Check it out.
This doesn't concern you. Beat it. Police business. Don't push me, son. You want to make this a problem? Are you looking for trouble? I think he's an accomplice. You had to push me. You leave me no choice. Another day, another scumbag off the street. Too much damned overtime. Did anybody frisk that guy? Shit, the bags burst. There's weed all over. Anybody want any of this? Didn't even break a sweat.
This ain't interesting. Go away. What's this to you? Beat it. Where are you gonna score now, huh? Come on, beat it. Don't make this an issue. You trying to bait me? Okay, I've had enough of you. You want a night in the cells? Fine. Okay, buddy, assume the position. I used to go to college with this guy. Anybody want any of this before I bag it? Where'd his gun go? Making all this money. Weed, coke, it's all the same to me. Beat him up a little, huh?
10 pennies set me up. Buster Crash set me up. 10 pennies sold me out.
I assume that when you arrived in East Los Santos to kill the dealer, there were at least 2 cops who cordoned off the area. There are lots of lines where they try to tell you multiple times to go away because it's police business, and perhaps if you ignore them, they would attack you. Remember when Pulaski told you about the weed? Well, guess what? These cops actually joke about sharing this weed with someone else and even manage to damage the bag somehow. Sadly, we don't know what actually happened there because linking Poncho's lines with these cops' lines doesn't give us a thing. Was the DEA involved in the ambush? Why were these 2 cops such dummies? Were they corrupt? Was it a stealth mission? We don't know. So to sum it all up, there was a Doberman mission for a crash where you had to deal with Poncho. For whatever reason, the game developers decided to remove this entire mission, and unfortunately, the story with Poncho was cut once and for all. But strangely enough, they took this mission and made an entirely different sequence for Sweet on the top of the old version. This time, you had to take over Glen Park and kill Little Weasel. And as you might have guessed, both of these versions don't really have anything in common. Why it was done in such a manner, I don't really know. But thanks to all of this, we do have a chance to look at these leftovers. And now for the meat and potatoes of this mission. This mission was actually called Doberman because in the old sequence, Tenpenny described CJ as a Doberman who can deal with whatever mess he finds himself in.
Well, it's a good thing we got our Doberman here to deal with it. You listening, Carl?
Nah.
But why they decided not to change the name for Sweet is kind of odd, and it sure as hell raises a lot of questions. Second of all, remember when Pulaski told Carl that he can take an opportunity to get some weed off Poncho's lairs?
There should be some weed being bagged as evidence. Think of it as a little opportunity we threw your way.
If yes, then you probably know that in the final game, the player is not allowed to use or possess any kind of drugs. However, there are a few unused strings from the stats menu which suggests that earlier in the game's development, there was an option for Carl to buy and sell drugs. Sadly, it remains unknown what this system was like and if Carl really was able to sell Poncho's weed after this mission was completed. Oh, and by the way, I almost forgot to mention, earlier in development the Doberman Mission went after Burning Desire and before Grey Imports. However, in the final version of the game, Burning Desire unlocks both Doberman for Sweet and Grey Imports for Crash. If you want to read my 2 cents about the mysterious CSPLAS-1 model and why it can and can't be linked with Carver, then please pause the video, because if not, then we'll move on. The next mission we're going to talk about is The Truth is Out There, which has a few strings. The mission plot is very basic. Our true pal, Truth, now has some real problems. Truth is chased by the federal agents for wandering into a restricted area known as Area 69. He's currently in the Bayside and wants CJ to help him as soon as possible, to which CJ agrees. This is a damn mysterious mission, because at the time we only have some additional mission strings, stating that you have to escort the Truth's car to safety by taking out anyone trying to kill him. And as a result, we know why the mission was started, but how it played out remains a mystery. But let's focus on the heli health string for the moment. It seems that there was a helicopter present with a health bar, which was involved in the chase. I have no idea whether or not this helicopter was yours or the enemy's. But one more thing to note is that the Truth also had a health bar. The mission would fail if Truth died or if his car was destroyed. Fun fact, by looking at these strings, it appears that CJ wasn't alone during this mission, as he asks someone to get back in and he says, "We gotta rescue the truth," and nothing more is known about it. In all honesty, I doubt that this mission was ever even finished. You see, the additional text for this mission isn't even color-coded. For instance, the "truth died" string must have an R flag to make the text red, and so on. Moreover, Area 69 is listed here as Area 51, as it is called in the real-life location that it parodies. And for the last note, this cut mission has a codename of Desert 12, but interestingly enough, there is no mission or even a mention about the 11th mission, while the 10th is green goo. I have no idea how to explain this. By the way, there is no evidence that this mission used FBI trucks, just consider this. The tanked up mission was the third mission for Zero. Thankfully, it had some unused text strings with a few but still present in-game voice lines. As you can see, this mission had lots of sequences. For example, strings from the AA to AF stands for one sequence, and BA to BE stands for another, and so on. Based on a guess, I do believe that it was a complicated mission after all. Anyway, since it's just a text, we can't say for sure what this mission truly was like. I tried my best to piece it all together, so here's my guess. CJ and Zero are having a conversation discussing Berkeley. Our nerd feels anxious because after defeating his rival for the last time, his life became boring, but suddenly they hear some strange noises. Zero believes that it's a Model 7 with a ratio 5:1 equipped with a cannon, however changes his mind. CJ believes that there's a whole army of those noisemakers. Zero suddenly feels happy, and the cutscene ends. Right after the cutscene starts the B sequence, when they finally see a group of those noisemakers. Zero mentions that Berkeley might be using transmitters to control his army, however Zero doesn't know how to stop him and asks CJ to do something. Sadly, the text for the C sequence is missing, so we have a gap on exactly how CJ dealt with this. Although if the player actually did something wrong, then Zero would kindly ask, "What are we doing and where are we going?" In the E sequence, they see Berkeley's units somewhere nearby, so CJ decides to deal with them. However, Zero believes that it's a trap left by his rival. I'm not sure who's said to deploy the tank, but it reveals that we are using the RC Tiger in the fight. And finally, in the F sequence, it says that we must fight against buggies to stop them at all costs, stating that they are just little cars. See, there are no remote buggies in San Andreas, however, it might be an RC Bandit, and there is solid proof for that. First of all, in GTA 3, the RC Bandit is referred to as RC Buggy. Secondly, it can explode. And now for the most interesting part. Apparently the mission would fail if you received too much damage from Berkeley's side, and the main reason for that were those pesky buggies. I might be wrong, but I see this scene like this. You're controlling an RC Tiger and tons of Berkeley's RC Bandits are trying to destroy your precious tank. I also assume that you could use the tank's cannon, because why not? It's a tank. I imagine that nearby terrain became a small place for a tiny scale war. Buggies could explode and your tank could shoot. It actually seems kind of intriguing. If you manage to eliminate all Berkeley's units, Carl would say that these nerds are playing hard, and Zero tells him that he has a lot of work to do. You might have noticed that I didn't bring up the A and Z strings. What is more interesting is the fact that these lines were actually voiced. Check it out.
Whoa, dude! A tiny war machine! Hey, is that like for real? Oh man! Ain't it cute? Holy Gaia! It's a bad trip Satan toy! Mother of God! It's blasting! Peacock shit! It's packing!
Hey, a cute toy tank! Make love toys, not war toys! Oh man, I've always wanted one of these! One serious frickin' toy! That toy's got real attitude problems! It's a tiny Soviet invasion!
Honestly, I haven't got a clue on who these two people are. Random pedestrians, Berkeley's minions, we don't really know for sure. Fun fact, it appears that while CJ and Zero were having a conversation during this cutscene, there was an RC Tiger and Chopper present. And since this cutscene is about Zero, it's possible that it was an RC Goblin or RC Raider. What's more interesting and kind of odd is how I really don't know how to connect the Chopper with those in-game strings. Was it used in the actual mission? Who knows? The biggest problem we are experiencing here is the fact that there are no strings with objectives or any kind of additional text. For instance, go there, grab this, you failed to save this character, and so on. It's just a plain text with lots of in-game dialogue, and you can only really guess who said these specific lines. I'm starting to think that this mission wasn't even done till the end. If you somehow acquire control over the miniature tank, which is not possible in the vanilla game, by attempting to shoot, you will hear a glitched minigun sound, which won't disappear. And that's pretty much all we can say about this mission. The Impound Mission will be the first and only mission which will be shown to you with the help of this modification, and the reason for this is very simple. You see, in the final version of the game, there are tons of leftovers scattered around from this mission. Text, voice lines, objectives, map icon, phone calls, and the initial cutscene's audio. However, there is no code left for this mission, and the cutscene itself is missing from the scene. Thanks to these finds, there was no need to imagine or guess what the mission sequences would be. In fact, the author just followed and traced these leftovers and restored them, piece by piece. So at this point, you'll see things to do in San Andreas gameplay in the background. After our precious victory in the race against Caesar, he decides to call us.
Now who's the loser?
Nah, I guess I am, Holmes.
Oh shit, Caesar, sorry man. I thought you was Kendall. We got this thing going on since we was kids.
That's okay, is it? You drove good today.
Yeah, thanks.
Anyway, I called to invite you over. Your sister said we should hang out. Get to know each other.
Okay. What you got planned?
Well, you want to see my garage? I got some beer.
Yeah, okay.
And bring a nice car, Holmes. I'll tune it up for you.
For sure, I'll see you later.
When CJ arrived at Caesar's, it would trigger the cutscene.
¿Qué pasa, Caesar?
Hey, Holmes! Hey, there's some beers up on the bench right there. I just gotta finish up under the hood, eh?
So, how you and my sister doing?
Just fine, CJ. Hey. So, how are you and, who are you seeing at the moment, huh?
You know me, I ain't found the right girl yet.
You ain't never gonna find the right girl, cause you treat them all like shit.
Easy, Angel. Man don't find love. Love finds man, eh, carnal?
Yeah, alright, man.
Yeah, I guess it does.
So, CJ, let's see your wheels.
Ain't nothing special, just, you know.
Chale, let Caesar work his magic. I'll make it special. Hey, where is it?
What the fuck?
I thought you said your ride was here.
Oh, shit, it's been towed.
What?
Oh, my God.
No.
Damn, what's the matter with this city? They always towing people's shit.
Fuck, Holmes.
I didn't even hear. Did you hear?
No.
I was gonna hook your shit up, eh?
Damn, what they the secret car towing service? Fuck! Damn!
Cálmase, Holmes. Don't worry. We can get it back. I know where the impound is. It's cool. Be back in a bit, baby.
Okay, baby.
Vámonos.
Right.
Without a doubt, while you were driving, Caesar would make a few comments.
The Los Santos police precinct is in Pershing Square in Commerce.
Yeah, I know Pershing Square.
There's an entrance to the left that leads to the underground car park. At the back is a garage that holds the impounded vehicles.
Ah, man, it's gonna be crawling with cops.
Yeah, I know, but if your prized car is missing when you come back to it, it's probably been towed.
Alright, man, thanks. I guess I could take it from here.
And after that, the game informs the player that all impounded cars are stored in a secured underground car park with cops around. So if you did lose your car, it would probably get towed. After this quick impound introduction, the player is prompted to retrieve his car back. And since it's a highly secured facility, your next challenge would be to bypass the gate. And as you did so, there were a few policeman quotes.
Hey, you! Police! Stop! Hey, what are you doing in here? Hey, this is police property! Okay, punk, have it your way. Hi there. In you go. How's it going? Okay, it's open. Hold on. There you go, pal.
Fun fact, 3 of these quotes were not even voice acted, though it remains a mystery if there were 2 options to pass by this cop. You heard that he could greet and open the gate, or that he could attack you. Speaking of the first option, there's only one way to get there without getting caught, which is by simply using a police car. Who knows, maybe if you just stole a police car, the gatekeeper would just greet you. Anyway, when Cole did retrieve his car, he would receive a few wanted level stars, and according to the strings, the game offered you to just respray it.
Damn, son.
After losing the heat, we had to return to Caesar so that he could tweak our car for us. And here are some more facts. Perhaps when Caesar offered us to pimp our car, he meant a low rider, but who really knows? And finally, we don't actually know what Caesar could do with our car. Did he add nitro or any kind of other goodies? Your guess is as good as mine. In all honesty, this mission doesn't make any sense for two reasons. First of all, I'm fairly certain that most players would just steal the first lowrider car off the street. And if so, why would CJ get upset if his car was towed if it wasn't even his in the first place? Unless CJ used the very same lowrider car from the previous race. And B, in the final version of the game, the impound lot doesn't work in the same way as it's shown during this mission. At the end of the day, I think that this mission was cut solely because of the second reason. Though, as you might have noticed, this mission had everything, almost as if it was cut in the late stages of development. Thanks to Silent, who fixed this feature in his Silent patch, he said that technically impounded garages do work. But due to a bug, if you are too far away from the actual impound, your car just disappears. And that's pretty much all I can say about this mission. I gave you all of the leftovers, now try to imagine what you would do during these missions and compare them with the TTDISA modification, and you will find that those missions don't actually represent the beta stage. Remember when I said that I understand why you would answer yes to the first question? Well, that's because there is false information and common misconceptions everywhere. For example, there is a huge article detailing the Roadside Assistance mission on the GTA wiki, which was undoubtedly written by relying solely on the TTDISA mod. And of course, everyone thinks that the wiki can't lie and thus begin to spread this information even further. And of course, there are more sources, but that's for another time. So, what do we learn today? Firstly, that the GTA wiki is not a reliable source for information, because anyone can at any given time edit and create their own articles and weird ideas. Always try to verify these facts for yourself. In all honesty, we should not blame our beloved GTA wiki for these errors, because the staff does try to warn people that there is a high amount of speculative content out there. Sadly though, people tend to overlook the legitimacy of other people's claims and just go on a whim that it's all true. I guess the point here is that you should always be critical of sources and the validity of the claim itself, especially when the person making said claim doesn't even have a source to begin with. Secondly, no one should really rely on the TTDISA mod for facts about the beta content. Even the creator of this modification himself stated that it's just an expansion pack for your beloved GTA San Andreas and nothing more. And also that the expansion pack is more than great. Not to mention that the gamers don't even want to read the readme file, where it's stated by the author that he had many difficulties while making these missions as real as possible. In short, he just made them the way he thought they were in the beta. So, why people decided to fabricate these stories about the mod containing beta mission is quite the mystery, though it can probably be attributed to people just making vague assumptions. It could also just be a bunch of tall tales told by people who really have no idea what they're talking about. That wouldn't really be that unusual considering the fact that, well, people love to make up things to get attention. A lie told often enough becomes the truth. No one actually attempted to check if the information was factual before spreading it. I hope that you now know the truth. My name is SWEGTA and I hope that you enjoyed this video. I actually have my own channel where I myself cover beta stuff from the Rockstar game Bully. So if you want to check that out, it'd be greatly appreciated. But other than that, I want to thank Vadim for having me yet again, and also thanks to you for watching. Have a good one.